we'll be discussing what is being called a backlash. Several women activists and youth who are doing work on social media platforms, online, other internet facilities are actually saying there's a backlash now, which is a direct threat to gender equality. And they say this is not only happening in Uganda, but it's also on a global scale. So they have been running a campaign that seeks to push back on this backlash. And today we are going to be having a discussion around this particular issue to understand what kind of backlash is taking place, especially in the context of Uganda, and what they're actually doing and what they expect from you, members of the public, to be able to address this particular concern. So I have three guests on this platform. Let me introduce Ms. Ruth Nagudi. She's the founder, Women Lens Africa. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum.
Thank you, Anderson, for having me this evening. Good evening, listeners.
Also in studio, Mr. Peter Ongom, Program Officer, Women of Uganda Network. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anderson.
Also in studio, Mr. Patrick Murungi. He is a lawyer at the Women's Pro Bono Initiative. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Murungi.
Good evening, Anderson, and good evening to the listeners.
All right, I'll begin with you, Mr. Ngom, Women of Uganda Network. You are the ones who are running this particular campaign and a certain project that addresses issues of backlash, and you understand clearly the issues they are in and the dangers that you say are emerging. What exactly are we looking at when you talk about backlash?
Yes, thank you so much, Anderson. I will start by talking briefly about UGNET, then I'll bring up the Countering Backlash project. UGNET, that's Women of Uganda Network, is a non-governmental organization that was initiated in May 2000 by several women's organizations in Uganda to develop the use of ICTs, that is information and communication technologies, among women as tools to share information and address issues collectively. UGNET envisions an inclusive and just society where women and girls are enabled to use ICTs for sustainable development. Our mission is to promote and support the use of ICTs by women and women organizations in Uganda so that they can take advantage of the opportunities presented by ICTs in order to address national and local problems of sustainable development effectively. While most of our work focuses on the internet, we also emphasize the use of traditional means of information dissemination, for example, the SMS, the radio, video, and television, and print media, among others. We have key strategic objectives, and therefore in number, that is for the duration of 2021 to 2025. One, gender and rights are integrated and enforced in government ICT policy processes and programs. Objective 2, women and girls have access to relevant information in urban and rural areas. 3, communities are empowered to use ICTs and demand for their digital rights. And objective 4, UGNET is a strong, vibrant, and sustainable center of gender and ICT excellence in Africa. Right now, UGNET is currently implementing a project on countering backlash, and this is being done in collaboration with the Institute of Development Studies. UGNET is highlighting and showcasing key backlash issues and cases in Uganda to build awareness of the effects of gender backlash, focusing on feminist organizing online and shrinking civic space. The project basically aims to co-create and communicate evidence and methods on backlash, the erosion of gender policies, and new opportunities for feminist actions. Among the key activities that we're actually doing under this project is conducting observatory meetings. It's one of our research methods. Countering Backlash is actually a research project which we are carrying out, and various activities that we are conducting in order for us to come up with a concrete report. We are conducting observatory meetings. We're also conducting policy mappings. We are also conducting policy dialogues. We're also having multi-stakeholder convenings, one-on-one meetings with various stakeholders. We're also conducting various trainings, especially digital security trainings and online safety. And also we're using a lot of digital platforms, the website and social media platforms to push out this information. And also, for example, Twitter chats and spaces. There are various stakeholders that we're actually involving in this project. For example, the state actors, especially the Uganda Police Force, that is the director of ICT. We're also involving policymakers. We've had visits to the Parliament ICT Committee, and also government agencies, especially the Uganda Communications Commission. And other sectors that we're involving are stakeholders from the civil society. We're engaging feminist organizations. We're also engaging women-led CSOs and media organizations. Then we're also engaging the private sector, especially people who are engaged in the technical world. We're also engaging academia, to be specific, that is the Makerere University School of Women and Gender Studies. We're also engaging lawyers, women human rights defenders in their different capacities, and other groups, media organizations. In this project, we're actually using a multi-stakeholder approach with various stakeholders, because we realize that it's actually important to engage all these actors in order for us to come up with concrete resolutions to counter backlash. How did the project stem up? We realized that a lot of work has been done by various actors, feminist organizations, and also the government in promoting gender equality in different spaces. For example, the civic spaces, the popular spaces, and the policy spaces. But one thing we need to know is that there's a lot of pushback. There are people who are actually pushing back the gains made so far on gender equality. And we are calling that backlash on the promotion of women's rights. That's how the project actually stems up.
All right, let's hear from these other stakeholders who are here in studio. I want you to define to us backlash. What exactly is going on when you look at what this project is targeting? And I'll begin with you, Ruth. How would you define backlash? What exactly is happening to the extent that you think it's becoming a threat to gender equality?
Backlash is basically sustained pushback against gender equality. You find that there are individuals and organizations or groups of people that are very intentional about bringing down women or making sure that women do not enjoy equal rights as men. These people are either paid, or they just organize themselves, or they're just against women progressing in any way, be it economically, politically, even just when it comes to issues like sexual rights and sexual health, reproductive rights. So you find that we have people who spread very wrong narratives about women. They make these conversations public. We have such figures, especially on X, formerly Twitter, and I cannot mention the names, but we have people there who are constantly posting against women. Saying,
give us examples. What kind of postings? What kind of messages?
For example,
what kind of narratives?
Someone can come up and say, very foolish women, it's not good for a woman to work, or for a woman to be rich or to be richer than the man, or to say that why should a woman be paid the same money as a man, even if they're doing the same role. And then there are people who will say a woman is supposed to be taken care of by her husband or by her spouse. Once they push these narratives, it affects these women's careers. You find that in the workspaces, there will be resistance to pay them the equal money that they pay to their male counterparts, as even if they're doing the same amount of work, or even when they're doing more, because there's a perception that these women are being taken care of by their spouses. And then also when it comes to the political arena, men, political candidates, you find that they don't ask them the same questions that they're asking women. They'll ask women, how do you balance work and home? Or you find when they're reporting about men, they'll report about their credentials. They have a master's, they've done this, they've been leaders here, they've founded this. But when a woman, they'll say, She has children by different fathers. She has been married 4 times. They focus on their private life rather than their potential and their competence in what they are supposed to be doing in the political arena.
All right. Are you suggesting that this kind of narratives has actually affected a certain group of people? So there are people, for instance, who have lost their jobs, or people who have actually been underpaid because of what has been written on social media? Is that what you're saying? Can you share examples? Do you have anything concrete that you can put forward?
I remember that female presidential candidate. She was called Charlie. Please remind me.
There was Chalia in 2016.
Chalia.
There was
Chalia. I remember there was a news report that Chalia had a mental breakdown where she because of the backlash, because of the attacks that she got when she ventured into the political arena, people were constantly critiquing her, not because they were questioning her credibility as a presidential candidate, but because they focused on her personal life, and that brought such a mental breakdown. The critiques she was receiving was not the same as the male presidential candidates who were with her at that time, who are competing against her.
But one would argue that once you step in that arena, you should be open to public scrutiny. There are key issues that people would want, like here in Uganda, there are people who look at issues to do with morality. There are people who look at issues to do with your ability and how your background as a person is likely to affect you executing that office where you want to go. Are you suggesting that we need to completely move away from those kind of things? I'm
suggesting that we should extend the same kind of measure to the men as well. We should, if we are going to look at the women's sexual history, what people now are calling body count, and if we are going to look at
body count,
yes,
what does that mean?
How many people you slept with? But that is out of the conversation right now. Okay. But then let's also extend the same exact measure to men. To the men who are competing against this woman. We never analyze how many wives the men have. We never analyze how many children they have by how many women. We never analyze them on a moral point of view, but rather competence. What I'm saying is that let us measure the women against their competence, their capability, and their qualifications and credibility. All right, let's hear from you, Mr. Mrungi. You are a lawyer, and probably you're grounded in matters to do with the law and rights that are probably being violated. Let's look at this backlash. From your side, are there any particular laws that are being violated? Is it something that should be acceptable in society? What's your take?
Thank you so much, Anderson. So my colleagues, my colleague Ruth has given us a definition of backlash, and perhaps we could center this around what is taking place or what is happening on social media, because this is where the biggest backlash has come from. And maybe to just give it a bit of a wider scope, you can look at it in terms of the women being sexualized, in terms of every time leaders are being asked to account, they are linking this to the LGBTI community. You can look at it in terms of body shaming. You can look at it in terms of cyberbullying and all that. So legally, the law that quickly comes to my mind is the just enacted Computer Misuse Act. Now, the Computer Misuse Act specifically, as amended, the amendment that came in 2022 gives us a bit of laws that, in a sense, are being violated in such situations. I will give you an example. Cyberbullying is one of those. We have malicious information. We have misuse of social media. Those are some of the provisions that are within our Computer Misuse Act. So the example that Ruth gives you is you have a situation whereby someone is posting information. I could use the example of maybe Agatha Tohaida, who is always giving information on our leaders. Anti-corruption. Yes, on corruption cases. But then someone comes around and says, look, Agatha, you have... this number of children, with this number of men, look, something like that. Now, that is exactly what that is what backlash is about, because that is not responding to the issue, but rather you are trying to trivialize it. That's one. But then you are sexualizing it. That's two. But also, it is now turning into cyberbullying, because you are not addressing the issue that someone has brought up, but rather you are trying to bully them away. But also you have situations where someone perhaps has a history where their images have been abused, where maybe their nude photos have been leaked. So certain people like those, whenever they are giving opinions, and these opinions could be on matters of governance, could be on anything else, they are always pulled back to some of these past things. So situations like those bring instances where you are in a sense pushing back towards particular information like this. But then we also have something that is growing within our community, which is really infantilizing individuals, and this is something whereby young people are continuously facing it, and considering that young people are the biggest users of social media, so you have young people raising issues, but then instead of being responded to, you have people who are simply nudging them away and saying, "You're just kids. What are you saying?" So that sense of being dismissive by merely pointing to someone's age is also something that does not augur well. So to respond to your question, Anderson, the Computer Misuse Act is the most offended law. Why? Because this backlash is majorly happening online, and this is the law that is specifically in place to address any online related offences.
All right, staying with you, Mr. Ongom actually hinted that one of the key stakeholders that are engaging in this particular project is the police, and the police, we know, are the ones who are in charge enforcing of the law. And we know you talked about the Computer Misuse Act. Are we seeing any sort of action from the duty bearers against those who are perpetuating this kind of backlash that you're talking about?
So the short answer to that question is no for now, and I could give you the reasons why. So this Computer Misuse Act is a bit of a very new law that has just been enacted. So the police is also still grappling with trying to understand it and trying to enforce it. Now, there have been instances where people have been arrested of offences that are related to that are online related offences, but we've not seen much progress to those specific offences. There's an organization called Agora that has done a bit of profiling of victims of abuse of office, and when I was looking through those particular victims, I noticed a number of them were being charged under the Computer Misuse Act. However, there was a bit of a pattern in those charges, and it looked like big people in government are simply using this law to target particular individuals. So it doesn't look like this is police working systematically to smoke out individuals who are offending the Computer Misuse Act, but rather it looks like a pattern of big wigs within this government using this specific law. So what I could say is that I don't think the police has fully appreciated this particular law. And I could say that perhaps even the DPP, our state attorneys under the DPP, may not have fully appreciated it, considering that we do not have a conviction yet. I haven't seen a conviction. The only one that we saw under the Computer Misuse Act was where someone was pleading guilty. So I really can. What I can say is that we have not yet seen this law really being appreciated and used by the police.
All right, Mr. Ongom, in your earlier submission, you hinted on several stakeholders that you've engaged during this particular project. let's focus a little bit on the duty bearers, the police, for instance, but also the victims themselves. What are they saying? What is their experience? Have you had people who have actually been traumatized, maybe requiring medical attention? Have you had people who have maybe lost their jobs, who have been affected grossly because of the cyberbullying, the backlash, and there's so many things that you highlighted when you spoke earlier?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anderson. We realize that the advancement in technology has actually brought so much development in the world today, but also the effects of the backlash is increasing because of this technology. So what we're actually doing is we're carrying out awareness on this backlash. We're carrying out trainings, especially on online safety, and also we're also running spot messages on various radio stations. The backlash is actually negatively affecting so many women and girls in the digital spaces. This actually creates fear among these women and girls, and many of them actually leaving the digital spaces. But realize that the digital spaces is where actually the opportunities are got, the internet. That's why you can get opportunities for development, for studies, and to do so many other things. So this backlash is actually negatively impacting the women and girls we've engaged, and various feminists we've engaged in the different spaces, which is actually making them miss out on the opportunities being presented by digital technologies.
Right. So what kind of advice are you giving in that particular regard when you see these kind of things that are happening?
First and foremost, there are actually so many recommendations, but I won't be able to mention them all. But first and foremost, digital safety actually starts with you. But a lot of empowerment needs to be done, especially on online gender-based violence. Engagements with the policymakers needs to be done, because we realize that there are actually gaps in laws, in these laws, cyber laws, and according to our findings, there are actually no specific laws that actually addresses the different forms of backlash or online gender-based violence. There are actually no critical laws that address the specific issues of online gender-based violence. And also, basically, a lot of sensitization needs to be done, especially with the Uganda police forces are the law implementers. We realize that many of these the law implementers are actually not aware about this law. So it actually makes it hard for them to criminalize the perpetrators of this backlash online.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we'll continue digging deeper to look at the kind of challenges that very many women are facing on the cyberspace as they continue to enjoy their rights. There's a very critical issue that Mr. Ngom raises there. Safety on the digital spaces begins with you. Are all these Ugandans aware of the threats that await them on the digital spaces? Are they taking responsibility? Are they posting anyhowly? Are they writing anything that could invite this kind of backlash? How do you understand your responsibilities as a person using the digital space, given the advancing technology that we have? Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum will continue after this break. Well, thank you for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion today is the backlash that's happening on the cyberspace and how it's affecting gender equality, not only in the context of Uganda, but also at the global scale. I'm speaking to Mr. Peter Ongom, Program Officer, Women of Uganda Network. Also in studio, Ms. Ruth Nagudi, Founder, Women Lens Africa, and Mr. Patrick Murungi, a lawyer at the Women's Pro Bono Initiative. Well, let me come to you, Ruth. One of the things that Ongom raised is the fact that safety begins with you and the digital space. And we have seen a number of women who have put up pictures, messages on social media, and of course they have received very negative reactions. And people have been debating and saying that, look, she deserves it because she put up that kind of picture. Maybe she was naked or things like that. We have heard about people's videos leaking and things like that. And of course, it's normal for some of those dangers that await them on digital spaces like social media. And are they able to protect themselves? Because, like Ongom said, safety begins with you.
digital spaces is still a new thing, especially in Uganda. And you realize that most people underestimate the effects of social media. We are still taken by surprise by the impact that comes from the posts we make. We've seen people losing jobs because of the posts they made in the past. You miss a position that you're applying for because of a history or a track record of specific posts you made in the past. You find people gaining fame overnight because of one post they made. So the impact of the things we post cannot be fully comprehended right now. But one thing for sure is that there is no excuse or there is no reason why anybody should be bullied when they post a picture of themselves, because even the women who are insulted when they make these posts, you find that most of them are not really naked, but they are body shamed because of the physical structure of their bodies, by standard or by beauty standards that we have set. Maybe they feel like they don't fit those standards. You find that maybe a woman who is a plus size is criticized a lot. A woman who is a darker tone, who has a dark tone of skin, will be criticized a lot. When they make these posts, you find that most of them are not really naked, but they are body shamed because of the physical structure of their bodies, by standard or by beauty standards that we have set. Maybe they feel like they don't fit those standards. You find that maybe a woman who is a plus size is criticized a lot. A woman who is a darker tone, who has a dark tone of skin, will be criticized a lot. Individuals, so that we do not hold people to our beauty standards, or we do not hold people to our moral standards that we think are moral. So going back to answering if these women can protect themselves, most of the attacks against them, they're not on their own making. I mean, if I come and I look like this and you have a problem with it, clearly that's your problem. There is no problem with the way I look. The problem is how you perceive me. But if women can protect themselves, most of the attacks against them, they're not on their own making. I mean, if I come and I look like this and you have a problem with it, clearly that's your problem. There is no problem with the way I look. The problem is how you perceive me.
But the fact that you're posting it on social media where there are so many people, you
very obscene and despicable that a man thinks like that because a woman has posted a picture of herself feeling very confident and beautiful, because in her view she's feeling confident and beautiful. I don't see why a man should repost it and make a very rude comment about it. And also we should desist from saying that nudes are leaked. No. It is a criminal offense. Let us stop calling it leaking. Nudes, videos are being leaked. Intimate videos. It is abuse of someone's privacy. And these things have undertone effects. People can be traumatized for life. People will withdraw from public spaces. Their careers are affected. Their family life is destroyed. So when we, as people are resharing these videos, smiling and laughing and making fun of them, they do not understand how they have destroyed an individual's life. And the people who leak, as you call it, but I think this should be called a very big criminal offense. The people who reshare these videos, they share them with intention to hurt, and actually they usually let men re-examine themselves, especially the men who share these videos.
All right.
It is a sign of poor upbringing and wickedness as an individual.
All right. Mr. Mrungi, you're the man of the law, but even with the law in place, like you said, shouldn't one be cautious enough to understand that much as I have rights to share this, I also have, the responsibility of actually protecting myself. Someone is saying that, look, maybe this content is not good enough for social media.
Yes, Anderson, that's exactly the dilemma that we have in the country, because if you look at the laws that we have, and as I said, the Computer Misuse Act is the one that we fall back to, you will notice that it is extremely difficult to get a conviction. We have had several, you're calling them leaks, they can be phrased as image-based abuse. We have had quite a number of those, but there have been situations whereby those whose images have been abused have reported, but we have never seen a conviction, or we have never seen anything like that. And I know it also poses a dilemma in a sense that because we probably have not gotten to a point where we have a department that gets to fully investigate that. We probably have not gotten to a point where even the victims themselves can withstand the scrutiny that comes with that when they are in court. So, of course, the safest thing to do is to fall back to yourself to say that I need to be a bit more careful, because there are a bit of, I could categorize them as 3 layers. The first being yourself, the second being these technology companies like X, formerly Twitter, like Meta, and all those, and the third being the authorities, that's the police, DPP, and the courts. But you'll notice that as an individual, there can be situations where you probably may get carried away, considering that you are in a bit of a position to trust this particular individual, or there can be situations where your phone gets hacked, or there can be situations where your phone is actually stolen. So in those in all those cases, it may not be entirely on your part. So it means that there must be another. You got now to the second layer where you say you can get to report these accounts that are sharing and have them taken down. And in situations where they are not, then you can fall back on the authorities where you get to have this particular prosecution. So I don't entirely think that victims should shoulder all the blame that comes with this, because many times it is not really within their own making, and so there has got to be safeguards that protect them, and these safeguards are what exist when are what the authorities, the parliament, should have had in mind when they were enacting laws like the Computer Misuse Act.
So what exactly is missing when you look at the legal framework in order to be able to protect these people who are facing the backlash? In your submission, what kind of advice would you give?
I think the only thing that is missing is perhaps the implementation. Because if you look at the law as it is, or as it is quoted, for example, you have provisions that are saying that if a person who without authorization shares information that relates to another person or a video, they commit an offense. So it means that's as clear as it comes that that's an offense, and so it is now upon the law enforcement authorities to pick it up. We have the police, we have the DPP in the chain, we have the courts in the chain. So it means that at the very first level is the police who are supposed to do the investigations, but then we need to be able to equip them to have that capacity, because we have seen time and again that police has been able to investigate and prosecution has happened for cyber crimes that relate to money, like money laundering, electronic fraud, and all that. But they got this kind of training, which they are able to do thorough investigations. Even when they get to court, they are able to. The DPP, it makes it very easy for the DPP. So at that point, there has got to be a bit of that training. Then, of course, at the second point is the prosecution level, who also have got to be trained in these kinds of offences, because this is a new law. It has not even made, it has not even seen its third birthday. So it means that it's a law that they're also trying to understand. So a lot of training has got to be done for that to happen. But then the other thing that we probably should not forget is that the victims also have got to be supported, because withstanding all that court scrutiny, I can give an example of a honourable member of parliament of Fort Portal, where I come from, who was continuously harassed by an individual. But even when they went to court, she was unable to get through that trial, because she wasn't emotionally able to get through the entire trial. So these people have also got to be supported, because that is also a very important piece within the puzzle. In the absence of this kind of these people testifying and giving evidence, then you cannot construct a case, even if you've done the best investigation and even if you have the best prosecutors.
Right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We have feedback coming in from the listeners, and I will ask you to take note and respond to some of these things. We have a comment coming in from a listener, Innocent Opio, who is listening to us from Ethiopia. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Opio. He says, any law right now depends on who is enforcing it and those who feel offended by the law. I actually feel like we are in 1984 by George Orwell. Totalitarianism, surveillance, language, and thought control and psychological manipulation. I think it's referring to the discussion we had around the Computer Misuse Act. And then we have another commentator comment coming in from Dennis Asimwe, who says, please ask Mr. Ngom directly, looking in his eyes, and I'm going to look in his eyes, if saying that a man is the head of the family is typical backlash. It says, and negative commentary against their objectives. Hint, we hold our breath since many wedded in the church. That's a comment there he gives. He actually says, is it a backlash when somebody says that the man is the head of the family? Then we have another comment coming in. According to my Bible, God created a woman to be a helper to the man. Why then that these women want to have same equal rights with the man? I'm not in support of that. That's why many women are killing their husbands due to many promises given to them. Where a woman tells her husband to go away from the home or one of them will die. Let them support their husband and be a good wife or partner at home. That's all. That's a comment coming in from Anthony. We have a comment coming in from Henry, who says, is it privacy to wear a short skirt that beats the standard of decency? Secondly, my sister in studio dreams of a world without men from her submissions. And that is Ruth, a comment coming directly to you. Then we have another. The moment you put something on a public platform, regardless of whether you are a woman or man, you should understand that there will be consequences, good or bad. We have another comment. Good evening, Kenneth. Teacher Ephraim here. Women are not only abused using the internet, but even at working places where some bosses ask to sleep with them before getting jobs, and they report to police, but the government doesn't respond to their protection. Okelo Patrick Bonyo, listening in from Busega. For many years, women have been using the narrative of gender inequality for generations, yet in reality, it's the men who are disadvantaged, and the government supports them. If you read a book by Esther Weiler, where in her book she explains how men are slaves to women. It's men to shoulder all the burden of the family by taking care of a woman and her offspring, says the book. The focus should be for both male and female, because these genders at one point will have to live together. Well, those are the comments that we are getting from the listeners, and I assume there are very many more that will come, but let's respond to those. I'll begin with you, Ongom.
Yes, thank you so much, Anderson. That's actually very interesting comments there, and I want to thank you all for tuning in for this talk show. There was the first question. I think the first comment is a man being the head of the family. Is it backlash? That is definitely not backlash, because I think we gave the definitions of backlash when we were starting the talk show.
Where is the backlash in the context of a family, the dynamics in a family? The backlash actually we are focusing on is the change in the narratives that is happening, especially in the digital spaces. And that is there are so many things that are happening which actually aims maybe to push down the women, and that is exactly what we're actually trying to research about. Yeah. So you're suggesting for someone to suggest that the man should be the head of a family, that's already backlash. Is that what you're saying? No, that is not backlash, Anderson. All right. Yeah. It's not backlash. Any other comments that you want to respond to as put forward by the listeners, or I can move around the table? Yeah. Basically, what I would also want to add on to that
As I mentioned earlier, there are actually so many struggles that have been going on by the government, by organizations, in order to promote gender equality. Because you realize that traditionally there's been a lot of gender inequality, but we realize that in order for the world to move forward, there's need for equality in workspaces and in other different spaces, and that brings in the need to counter backlash.
All right, let's move around the table, and I'll come to you, Ruth. Your comment, your reaction to some of the comments that have come in very quickly.
Oh, wow. My brother who talks about me dreaming of a world where there are no men. I actually dream of a world where we have more men, and I dream of a world where men are more supportive to women, kind to women, and they uplift women. That is the world I dream of, where a woman doesn't have to feel unsafe when she's moving in town, where she doesn't have to be catcalled when she's passing by a border stage, where she can post a picture without being told that she has a big nose or she doesn't have a bum. That is the world I dream of, a world where women are treated well and looked at as human beings with potential and valued, respected. So that is the world I dream of, and I dream of a world where every man looks at a woman the same way they look at their mothers, their sisters, or their daughters. When it comes to equal rights, Anthony, when I talk of equal rights, I actually simply mean you're referring to the Bible, and I'm glad to tell you that I'm a born-again Christian. So, and I'm an ardent Bible reader who has read from cover to cover. Yes, I believe that men and women are not equal, but when we are doing things, for example, if I am doing the same exact job with my male counterpart, I expect to be paid the same money. And if I'm doing more work than my counterpart, if I'm holding a position higher than him, I should be paid money that is worth that position, not being paid less because I'm a woman.
What of a situation where there are negotiation skills, where you have to negotiate for your pay, where there's no set standard for a particular kind of job?
Still, I would expect that I am paid at least worth. The problem with the patriarchal system that has been set up is that women are discriminated on the basis of being a woman, not having the qualifications, not being able to do the job. But because it is a woman, people will tell you, that is a woman, she shouldn't do that. That is a woman, she shouldn't do this. And now we have changing gender roles. We have more women contributing to households. We have women taking charge of households financially, but you still find even a man in such incidences, they still want to dominate and they still want to mistreat the woman, a woman who is bringing in, who is contributing equally to the household. So when I talk about rights, I'm talking about rights like a woman should own a company the same way a man owns. A woman should negotiate for the same exact thing that a man is negotiating for without being told you cannot get this because you're a woman. In politics, women should participate equally without being body shamed, without being told that they are ugly, without being asked if they are married or not, without being asked how many fathers of children do they have. I'm simply saying that we should be accorded the same respect that men are accorded. And of course, I believe that men and women can never be equal because we are created differently. But when it comes to opportunities, we should equally qualify by the fact that we have the qualifications and the fact that we are credible for the roles. That is what I mean when I say equal rights.
There was a comment on dressing, but I want to give you another one that relates to it. There's something wrong dressing provocatively and apportioning the blame to disgusted onlookers. The intention right from selecting the wear is wrong, and I can prove it. Interview people for jobs and no one dresses provocatively. I see ladies at funeral who provocatively cover their short skirts with lasso. Raping, attacking and abusing them is wrong too. I strongly disagree with the way the presenter is going around this important issue. Well, I'm not going around it. I'm trying to ask the questions that some people out there are actually thinking about. A comment comes in from Kamogo Fred Keta, who says, "Good evening, Anderson. Thanks for Spectrum. I want to thank the backlash activists One, we have seen women on social media platforms hurling insults to men, especially after they break up in their relationship, calling them all sorts of names. In fact, you make research, almost every single man becomes a woman activist. Now, if they have children involved in the relationship, they go to the extent of involving their children, demeaning the father of their children. My question is, what have you done to reprimand such ladies to stop that vice? Then we have another comment. Soon, I think women will start proposing to men. However, if proposing remains a man's thing, then we are like cows learning to dance. Very quickly, as we come towards the end of the show, would you like to say something? And then we move to Mr. Murungi for his concluding remarks.
Okay. I'll speak about indecent dressing. Who sets the standard for indecent dressing? And what
provocatively dressing.
And who sets the standard for provocatively? Because provocative is relative. And I strongly believe that this is based on someone's mindset. If you are perverted, you will definitely look at it as indecent and provocative. Why would you be provoked if you don't have a perverted mind? I think this is individual responsibility that we should talk about. And where is the standard? Is it statutory in any way that the standard of dress code should be this or it should be that? So this should be relative from one individual to another. We should stop putting women in boxes. We should stop putting women in small spaces where we think we should control them and decide what they do.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Murungi as we come towards the end of the show. So your response to some of the comments that have come across, but also your closing remarks.
I could just speak on one comment that talked about a totalitarian state with surveillance and control. Maybe the one thing that I can say is that if it is that kind of state that we've decided to live in, then perhaps we can interest ourselves, the authorities can interest themselves more in dealing with many of these cases, because these are online cases. These are cases that have got to do with technology. So the thinking would be that as a country, we have a robust, technologically advanced kind of system that should be able to deal with some of these. So maybe the goodwill should come in such that it can be able to help us deal with many of these cases. Thank you.
All right, I'm afraid time is not our best ally. We must bring this discussion to an end. Let me thank you, Mr. Peter Ongom, Program Officer, Women of Uganda Network. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Murungi, lawyer at the Women's Pro Bono Initiative, and you, Ruth Nagudi, founder, Women Lens Africa. Thank you, very dear listeners, for actually tuning in, but also contributing to this discussion. Tomorrow, same time, Spectrum will be on air. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.